The night air was thick with tension as Jenna huddled closer to the fire, its flames flickering like the fleeting thoughts in her mind. She had come to Whispering Woods with her friends for what was supposed to be a weekend of fun and exploration, but as the sun dipped below the horizon, the playful banter and laughter faded into an uneasy silence. The stories they had heard from locals about the infamous Bigfoot of the region crept back into her mind, tales that were often dismissed as mere folklore by the skeptical. "Did you guys hear that?" Marcus, the most adventurous of the group, asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The group, consisting of Jenna, Marcus, Sarah, and Brian, exchanged uneasy glances, their smiles replaced by worried frowns. "It's probably just an animal," Sarah replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. She wrapped her arms around her knees, drawing them close to her chest, as if to shield herself from the encroaching darkness. The forest loomed around them, the towering trees whispering secrets in the wind. "No, really," Marcus insisted, his eyes wide with excitement. "I've heard that this place is haunted by Bigfoot. People say there are strange rules you have to follow if you ever encounter him." "Strange rules? Like what?" Brian scoffed, rolling his eyes but leaning forward with curiosity. Jenna felt a chill run down her spine. The thought of Bigfoot, a creature she had once laughed off, suddenly felt all too real. Marcus leaned closer to the fire, his face illuminated by the orange glow. "They say you have to follow these rules to survive an encounter. First, you must never turn your back on him. If you see him, you have to keep your eyes on him at all times. Second, never make loud noises. If he hears you, it's game over. And third, you must never, ever run. If you run, he'll chase you." The group exchanged glances, the weight of Marcus's words settling heavily upon them. "That sounds ridiculous," Sarah scoffed, though her voice lacked conviction. "It's just a myth." "Is it?" Marcus shot back. "People have gone missing in these woods, and the ones who came back, they've all had similar stories about a giant figure lurking in the trees." Okay, let's not freak ourselves out," Jenna said, attempting to lighten the mood. "We're here to have fun, remember." But the unease lingered like a shadow over their campsite. As the fire crackled, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The woods seemed to breathe around them, the sounds of nature amplified in the stillness of the night. Every rustle of leaves felt like a whisper, every snap of a twig sent adrenaline coursing through her veins. As the hours dragged on, the fire dwindled to embers and the group decided to call it a night. Jenna crawled into her tent, her heart racing as she replayed Marcus's chilling words. She tried to shake the anxiety, telling herself it was just a story. Still, sleep evaded her. Outside, the forest was alive with sounds, a chorus of chirping crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, and the occasional rustle that made her muscles tense. She closed her eyes tightly, hoping to block out the noises, but her mind kept drifting back to the tales of Bigfoot. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the trees, causing Jenna to bolt upright in her sleeping bag. Her breath hitched as she strained to hear, the darkness swallowing every sound. After a moment, she heard it again, a series of heavy thuds, followed by what sounded like deep, guttural growls. She felt a cold sweat break out across her forehead. Jenna's heart raced as she cautiously unzipped her tent, peeking out into the inky blackness. The fire pit was mere embers now, casting only the faintest glow. The other tent stood ominously still, and she felt an overwhelming urge to wake her friends, but something held her back. What if it was just her imagination? What if it was something worse? Deciding to be brave, she stepped out of her tent, the cool night air wrapping around her like a shroud. She listened intently, straining to catch any sounds above her pounding heart. Then she saw it, a massive silhouette moving between the trees, just at the edge of the firelight. Her breath caught in her throat as the figure paused, the moonlight illuminating its massive frame. It was at least 8 feet tall, covered in dark, matted fur, and its eyes glinted like two small orbs in the night. Frozen in fear, Jenna remembered Marcus's rules. Keep your eyes on him. She could hardly breathe as she locked her gaze on the creature, its large head tilting slightly as if trying to assess her presence. Jenna, a voice broke through the haze of fear. It was Brian, stepping out of his tent, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What are you doing?" The Bigfoot's head snapped toward Brian, its eyes narrowing. Jenna instinctively raised a hand, but it was too late. Brian's voice had shattered the silence, and the creature let out a low growl that vibrated through the air. "Get back," Jenna shouted, but it was too late. The creature lunged toward Brian with an unexpected speed, its massive arms outstretched. Brian stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of his tent as Jenna's instincts kicked in. She grabbed his arm, pulling him back just as the creature crashed into the ground where he had been standing. They both scrambled to their feet, adrenaline surging as they made a frantic dash back to the safety of the fire. "Where's Sarah?" Brian yelled, panic rising in his voice. Jenna's heart sank. She hadn't seen Sarah since the incident began. They both turned to look for their friend when a high-pitched scream pierced the air, chilling them to the bone. The sound was filled with sheer terror. It came from the direction of Sarah's tent. "Sarah," Jenna shouted, but her voice trembled. She didn't know what to do. The creature was still lurking at the edge of the trees, its massive form blending into the shadows, watching them. "Stay here," Brian said, his voice firm despite the fear etched on his face. "I'll go get her." "No, we can't split up. Marcus is still in his tent, too," Jenna protested, her heart racing. But before they could argue further, another growl rumbled through the trees, more threatening this time. The Bigfoot stepped closer, revealing its towering height. Jenna felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over her. "Run," she shouted, grabbing Brian's arm. They sprinted toward the safety of the cars parked a short distance away, but the darkness felt alive, as if it were closing in around them. As they ran, the sounds of snapping branches and heavy footsteps followed them, the creature hot on their heels. They reached the cars, fumbling for their keys in panic. Jenna's fingers trembled, the metal cold and unyielding as she fought to stay calm. "Where's Marcus?" Brian shouted, panic etched into his features. "I don't know," Jenna cried back, her heart racing as she glanced over her shoulder. The creature was looming closer, its growls echoing in the still night air. Get in," Brian yelled, finally finding his keys and unlocking the car. They both jumped inside, slamming the doors shut just as a massive thud reverberated against the side of the vehicle. Jenna screamed, her heart racing as they glanced at the trees. The Bigfoot stood just outside, its breath visible in the cold night air, eyes glinting with a predatory gleam. The creature seemed to regard them for a moment before it turned and let out a deep, bone-chilling howl that echoed through the woods. "What do we do?" Jenna whispered, her voice shaking. "We wait for Marcus and Sarah," Brian replied, his voice steadier than he felt. But as they waited, the realization set in. What if they didn't come back? What if they were lost in the woods with that thing? Minutes felt like hours as they sat in silence, hearts pounding, the world outside their car growing eerily quiet. It was as if the entire forest had paused, holding its breath in anticipation. Then, from the depths of the trees, a figure emerged, stumbling and disheveled. It was Marcus, his face pale and eyes wide with fear. He ran toward them, glancing back over his shoulder as he approached. Get in," he shouted, rushing to the car. Jenna flung the door open for him, and he dove inside, slamming the door just as a low growl sounded from the darkness. "Where's Sarah?" Jenna demanded, her voice shaking. "I don't know, I lost her," Marcus gasped, his eyes darting around. "We have to get out of here." "Start the car," Brian urged, panic rising. Jenna's hands shook as she turned the key in the ignition, praying it would start. The engine roared to life, and she slammed the car into reverse ready to flee. But as she looked in the rearview mirror, her heart sank. The Bigfoot was there, standing in the middle of the road, its massive frame blocking their escape. It raised its head, letting out another howl that sent shivers down their spines. "We can't just sit here," Marcus yelled, his voice rising in desperation. "What do we do?" "Remember what I said," Jenna whispered, recalling Marcus's rules from earlier. "We can't run, we have to stay calm. Keep your eyes on it." "Calm? Are you kidding me?" Brian shot back. "That thing is a monster. We need to get out of here." "No," Jenna insisted, her voice firm. "If we run, it will chase us. Just stay still." They all fell silent. breathing heavily as they stared at the creature. The Bigfoot seemed to study them, its gaze piercing and unyielding. It took a step forward, causing Jenna to hold her breath. Suddenly, it stopped and tilted its head as if considering them. Then, in an unexpected moment of bizarre calm, it turned its gaze toward the trees, letting out a series of low grunts and growls that echoed through the night. "What is it doing?" Marcus whispered, bewildered. "I don't know," Jenna replied, her heart racing, "but maybe it's trying to communicate." Brian shook his head, panic etched on his face. "This isn't some movie, it's a wild animal, and we're trapped." "Wait," Jenna said, her mind racing. "What if the rules are real? What if it's trying to establish some sort of dominance? We have to show that we're not a threat." Marcus frowned but nodded, his expression serious. "Okay, but how?" Jenna took a deep breath, willing herself to be brave. "Let's all just relax. Don't move too fast. Maybe if we don't threaten it, it will let us go." They sat in silence, the atmosphere thick with tension as they watched the creature. It seemed to lose interest in them, its eyes drifting toward the trees again. Then, suddenly, it turned back to them, letting out a deep growl. Jenna felt her stomach drop. It was time for them to leave, but as she reached for the gear shift, she hesitated. What if moving too quickly triggered its instinct to chase? "What's happening?" Marcus whispered, his voice shaky. "I don't know," Jenna replied, her mind racing, "but I think it's trying to send a message." As they sat there, Jenna's heart pounded in her chest. The creature took a step back, its growls softening, and for a moment, it felt almost human, as if it were trying to communicate something important. "Maybe it's testing us," Marcus suggested. "Maybe there's a way to show we mean no harm." "What do you mean?" Brian asked, his voice barely a whisper. "We need to follow the rules," Jenna said, her mind racing. "We need to show we're not a threat." The creature's eyes glinted in the darkness as it stepped forward again, this time more cautiously. It tilted its head, studying them intently. Jenna could feel its gaze piercing through her, as if it were searching for something deep within her soul. "Okay," she said, her voice trembling. "Let's all just take a deep breath. We're not here to harm you." To her surprise, the creature paused, as if understanding her words. The growls softened, and for a brief moment, Jenna felt a strange connection, a bond of shared fear and uncertainty. "Maybe if we all hold our hands up," Marcus suggested hesitantly, like showing we come in peace. "Good idea," Jenna replied, taking a deep breath. They all slowly raised their hands, palms out, trying to convey a sense of calm. The creature's eyes narrowed further, and it stepped back again, watching intently. Jenna felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they could negotiate their way out of this terrifying encounter. As they sat there, their hands raised, a tension hung in the air. The creature remained still, its massive frame almost blending into the night. It made no move to advance, but its eyes glimmered with an unsettling intelligence. "What do we do now?" Brian whispered, his voice shaking. "We just have to wait," Jenna replied, her heart racing. "If we show we mean no harm, maybe it will let us go." Minutes passed, each second stretching into eternity as they sat there, hands raised, eyes fixed on the creature. Then, suddenly, the Bigfoot let out a series of low grunts, and to their astonishment, it turned and began to retreat into the woods, disappearing into the shadows. Jenna let out a breath she didn't know she was holding, her heart racing. "Did that just happen?" she asked incredulously. "I think so," Marcus replied, his eyes wide. "But what does it mean?" "I don't know," Jenna admitted, feeling a strange mix of relief and confusion. "But we need to find Sarah. We can't leave without her." "Right," Brian said, glancing at the woods where the creature had vanished. "But what if it comes back?" "We have to stick together," Jenna insisted. "Let's grab some flashlights and head toward her tent. We can't just leave her out here." The three of them stepped cautiously out of the car, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. Jenna felt the weight of the night pressing down on her, the darkness closing in around them as they made their way to Sarah's tent. "Sarah," Jenna called out, her voice echoing through the trees. "Where are you?" There was no response, only the sound of the wind rustling through the branches, an eerie reminder of the night's terror. "Keep looking," Marcus urged, shining his flashlight toward the darkened trees. "She has to be around here somewhere." As they approached Sarah's tent, Jenna's stomach twisted with anxiety. What if she's hurt? Brian knelt beside the tent, unzipping it carefully. "Sarah," he called softly, peering inside. Jenna's heart sank as she realized the tent was empty. "She's not here," she exclaimed, panic rising in her chest. "What if she's lost?" "We have to find her," Marcus said, determination set in his jaw. "We can't leave her behind." They gathered their flashlights and ventured into the dark woods, the fear still lingering in the back of their minds. The trees loomed overhead, the shadows deepening as they pushed further into the unknown. "Sarah," Jenna shouted, her voice trembling. "Can you hear us?" The forest seemed to hold its breath, the only sound the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. Just as they were about to give up hope, they heard a faint whimpering sound coming from deeper in the woods. "Did you hear that?" Marcus asked, his eyes widening. "Yeah," Jenna replied, her heart racing. "It's coming from over there." She pointed toward a thicket of trees where the sound seemed to be coming from. They hurried toward the noise, calling Sarah's name, fear clawing at their throats. The closer they got, the more frantic the whimpering became, a sound of sheer terror that made Jenna's stomach churn. "Sarah," Jenna cried out again, pushing through the branches. Then they found her. Sarah was huddled against a tree, tears streaming down her face, her eyes wide with fear. "Sarah," Jenna rushed to her, kneeling beside her. "What happened? Are you okay?" I don't know," Sarah stammered, her voice trembling. "I heard it. I heard the growling, and then I couldn't find my way back." "It's okay, we're here now," Jenna said, wrapping her arms around her friend. "You're safe." Brian and Marcus moved closer, shining their flashlights to make sure there were no dangers lurking in the shadows. "What did you see?" Marcus asked gently. "Did you see the creature?" Sarah shook her head, still trembling. I heard it, but I didn't see it. I just ran when I heard the growling. I didn't know where to go." "We're all together now," Brian assured her, his voice steady. "Let's get back to the campsite." As they turned to head back, a loud crash echoed through the woods, freezing them in their tracks. The Bigfoot was back, its growl reverberating through the trees, a deep, ominous sound that sent chills down their spines. "Run," Jenna shouted, grabbing Sarah's hand and pulling her along as they sprinted through the underbrush. Behind them, the creature pursued, its footsteps heavy and relentless. They raced back toward the campsite, hearts pounding in unison. Jenna felt as though her lungs would burst, fear propelling her forward. But the sound of the creature was closing in, each heavy thud echoing in her ears. "Over here," Brian shouted, pointing toward the cars. They reached the vehicles, scrambling inside just as the Bigfoot let out another earth-shattering growl. "Lock the doors," Marcus yelled, his hands shaking as he fumbled with the locks. They all dove into their seats, slamming the doors shut, hearts racing as they caught their breath. "What do we do now?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "We wait," Jenna said, her voice trembling. "We need to figure out how to get out of here safely." As they huddled inside the car, the weight of their situation settled upon them. The creature was still lurking nearby, the sounds of heavy breathing and rustling branches echoing through the night. "Maybe it's guarding something," Marcus suggested. "Maybe it's protecting its territory." "What does that even mean?" Brian replied, his voice strained. "How do we get past it?" "Maybe we need to try to communicate again," Jenna said, her mind racing. "If it's a creature that follows rules, maybe it will listen." "Are you insane?" Marcus shot back. "That thing could kill us." "But we need to try," Jenna insisted, her heart pounding. "We can't stay trapped here forever." With a heavy heart, Jenna opened the car door, her hands trembling as she stepped out into the darkness. "I'll go," she said, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. "I'll try to talk to it." "Jenna, don't," Sarah cried, but Jenna held up a hand, her determination unwavering. "I have to do this," she replied. "We can't let fear control us." Taking a deep breath, Jenna stepped forward, keeping her eyes on the dark trees where the creature lurked. "I'm not here to hurt you," she called out, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the massive figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes glinting in the dim light. Jenna felt her heart race as she took another step forward. "We just want to leave," she said, her voice trembling. "We're not your enemies." The creature paused, its expression unreadable. It seemed to consider her words, its massive frame towering before her. Then it let out a low growl, and Jenna felt a shiver run down her spine. "Please," she pleaded, holding her hands out in a gesture of peace. "We mean no harm. Just let us go." The Bigfoot's eyes narrowed, and it stepped closer, its breath hot against her skin. Jenna felt a wave of fear wash over her, but she forced herself to stand her ground, keeping her gaze locked on the creature. After what felt like an eternity, the creature tilted its head, and to her surprise, it let out a series of soft grunts. Jenna's heart raced as she realized it was responding to her, a strange sound that echoed through the night. "Please," she whispered again, her voice barely audible, "just let us leave." For a moment, the creature seemed to consider her words. Then, slowly, it stepped back, its massive form retreating into the shadows. "Go," it seemed to convey, its eyes glinting with a mix of warning and understanding. Jenna took a step back, relief flooding through her. "It's letting us go," she shouted, turning back to her friends. "Come on." They all hurried back to the cars, adrenaline surging through them as they climbed inside. Jenna's heart raced as she turned the ignition, praying the engine would start. To her relief, it roared to life, and they all breathed a sigh of relief as they pulled out of the campsite, glancing back one last time at the dark trees where the creature had disappeared. "What just happened?" Sarah asked, still trembling. "I don't know," Jenna replied, her heart racing, "but I think it was trying to protect its territory." Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "That was insane. I can't believe you talked to it." "I had to try," Jenna said, her voice steady. "We couldn't let fear dictate our actions." As they drove away, the tension of the encounter lingered in the air, a reminder of the terrifying experience they had shared. "Let's just get home," Brian said, his voice trembling. "I never want to come back here again." Jenna nodded in agreement, but as they left the whispering woods behind, she couldn't shake the feeling that the encounter had changed them forever. They had faced the unknown, confronted their fears, and survived. But as the darkness of the forest faded into the distance, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What other creatures lurked in the shadows, waiting for their chance to be seen? The ride back was quiet, each of them lost in their thoughts as the landscape changed from the ominous woods to the familiar sights of civilization. Jenna couldn't help but replay the events over and over in her mind, each detail etched into her memory. "What do you think it was trying to tell you?" Sarah finally asked, breaking the silence. "I don't know," Jenna admitted, "but I think it wanted us to understand its rules. We didn't belong there, and it wanted us to know that." "Strange rules for a strange creature," Marcus mused. "I still can't believe you actually spoke to it. That took guts." "It was terrifying," Jenna replied, her hands gripping the steering wheel. "But I had to try. We were out of options." As they drove further away from the woods, the weight of their experience began to lift, but a nagging question remained in the back of Jenna's mind. What if they hadn't made it out? What if they had become another missing person in the lore of the Whispering Woods? "Do you think it will come after us?" Brian asked, glancing nervously at the rearview mirror. "I don't know," Jenna replied. "I hope not. We respected its space, and maybe that's what mattered." Days turned into weeks, and the incident at Whispering Woods began to feel like a distant memory, a nightmare that had faded into the background of their lives. But the stories lingered, haunting Jenna's thoughts as she tried to move on. She found herself reading more about Bigfoot, delving into the folklore and the strange encounters people had shared over the years. The stories were as varied as they were unsettling, each one carrying a kernel of truth that sent shivers down her spine. "Are you still thinking about it?" Sarah asked one evening as they sat on Jenna's porch, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink. "I can't help it," Jenna admitted, her gaze fixed on the horizon. It was so real, and the rules, they were so strange. What does it all mean? "Maybe it means we need to respect nature," Sarah suggested. "Those woods belong to it, and we were just intruders." "Maybe," Jenna mused. "But I can't shake the feeling that there's more to the story. What if there are other creatures out there and we just don't understand them?" "Now you're sounding like a conspiracy theorist," Sarah laughed, but there was an edge of nervousness in her tone. "I'm serious," Jenna replied, her heart racing. "What if the rules are more than just folklore? What if there's a reason people go missing in those woods?" The conversation lingered in the air, a sense of unease settling over them as they pondered the implications of their encounter. Weeks passed, and Jenna tried to put the experience behind her, but the memories lingered like a shadow. One evening, she was startled by a knock at her door. When she opened it, she found Marcus standing there, his face pale and eyes wide. "Jenna, you won't believe what I just heard," he said, stepping inside as if he were afraid of being followed. "What is it?" Jenna asked, her heart racing. "I was talking to some friends and they mentioned something about a sighting near Whispering Woods," Marcus said, his voice low. "They said there's been an increase in strange noises and sightings lately." Jenna felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "They said people have reported seeing the creature again, and there have been more stories about the rules," he explained. "It's almost like it's trying to warn people away." "Warn them away," Jenna echoed, her mind racing. "But why?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted, "but it makes me think we weren't the only ones who encountered it. What if there are more people who've seen it? What if they didn't make it back?" Driven by a mix of curiosity and fear, Jenna, Marcus, and Sarah decided to investigate the recent reports. They reached out to locals, gathering stories and rumors about the strange happenings in the Whispering Woods. "What if we go back?" Sarah suggested one evening, her eyes shining with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "What if we can find answers?" "I don't know if that's a good idea," Jenna replied, her heart racing. "What if the creature is more aggressive now?" "We need to understand what we're dealing with," Marcus insisted. "We can't let fear dictate our lives. If we don't confront it, we'll always wonder what could have happened." After much debate, they agreed to return to Whispering Woods, this time prepared with cameras and flashlights, ready to document any evidence of the creature. As they drove back to the campsite, tension filled the air. The woods loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, each tree a sentinel of the unknown. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "We have to do this," Marcus replied. "We need to find out what's going on." They parked at the same spot where they had encountered the Bigfoot before, hearts pounding in unison as they stepped out into the night. "Remember the rules," Jenna said, her voice steady. "Stay calm, keep your distance, and respect its space." As they ventured deeper into the woods, shadows danced around them, the trees whispering secrets that had been hidden for centuries. They set up their equipment, determined to capture any evidence of the creature's presence. Hours passed, the silence thick and heavy around them, until they heard it, the low growl echoing through the trees, sending chills down their spines. "It's back," Jenna whispered, her heart racing. "Stay still," Marcus urged, his voice barely above a whisper. "Remember what happened last time." They huddled together, eyes fixed on the darkness as the growling grew louder, reverberating through the air like a warning. Suddenly, the creature emerged from the shadows, its massive frame towering over them. Jenna felt her heart stop as she locked eyes with the Bigfoot once again. "Stay calm," she whispered, her breath hitching in her throat. The creature paused, studying them with an intensity that sent shivers down Jenna's spine. It let out a low growl, its eyes narrowed in warning. "Just like before," Jenna murmured, feeling the weight of the moment. "It's trying to communicate." As they stood there, frozen in fear, Jenna raised her hand slowly, the same gesture of peace she had used before. "We're not here to hurt you," she called out, her voice steady despite the trembling in her chest. To her surprise, the creature tilted its head, seeming to consider her words. Then it let out a series of soft grunts, the growl softening as it stepped back slightly. "See?" Jenna whispered to Marcus and Sarah. "It's listening." But then, out of the corner of her eye, Jenna noticed movement in the shadows. A group of people emerged, their faces lit by the glow of flashlights, and she felt a surge of panic. "Get back," one of them shouted, brandishing a stick. "That thing is dangerous." "No," Jenna yelled, trying to wave them off. "Don't provoke it." But the intruders had already begun to shout, their voices cutting through the tension like a knife. The Bigfoot growled again, its posture shifting as it sensed the threat. "Stop," Jenna cried, feeling a wave of desperation. "We're trying to communicate. Please don't scare it." But the shouts only escalated, and the Bigfoot roared in response, a deafening sound that echoed through the trees. In an instant, chaos erupted. The group of people stumbled back, fear etched on their faces as the creature advanced, its massive form looming over them. Jenna's heart raced as she realized they were losing the chance to negotiate. "Everyone, calm down," Jenna shouted, stepping forward again. "We're not here to fight. We just want to understand." But the people continued to panic, and the Bigfoot let out a series of terrifying growls, its patience waning. "Jenna, we need to get out of here," Marcus yelled, tugging at her arm. "No," Jenna insisted, feeling a surge of determination. "We can't let fear win." "Are you insane?" Sarah cried, her eyes wide. "That thing could hurt you." "I have to try," Jenna said, feeling the weight of the moment. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, raising her hands again. "Please, we mean no harm." To her surprise, the Bigfoot paused, its growls softening as it seemed to sense her sincerity. Jenna felt a glimmer of hope, her heart pounding as she took another step forward. "Let us go," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "We just want to leave." The creature tilted its head, considering her words, but then the group shouted again, their panic spiraling out of control. "Run," one of them shouted, and in an instant, chaos erupted again. "Get out of here," Jenna cried, her heart racing as the Bigfoot roared once more, a sound of frustration and anger that sent shivers down her spine. "Run," Marcus yelled, and they all turned, sprinting through the woods as the creature pursued them, its massive footsteps thundering behind them. Jenna's heart raced as she pushed through the underbrush, branches scratching at her arms as she ran. The sounds of the growling filled the air, a terrifying reminder of the creature's power. "Where do we go?" Sarah gasped, glancing back nervously. "Just keep moving," Jenna shouted, adrenaline surging through her veins. They raced deeper into the woods, the darkness closing in around them as they searched for a way out. But the Bigfoot was relentless, its growls echoing through the night. "Over here," Marcus shouted, pointing toward a narrow path that led deeper into the trees. They followed him, fear propelling them forward as they stumbled through the brush. Jenna's mind raced as she tried to think of a plan. They had to get away, but the creature was hot on their heels. Suddenly, they reached a clearing, and Jenna spotted a small cabin in the distance. "There," she shouted, pointing toward it. "Let's go," Marcus urged, and they sprinted toward the cabin, the sound of the Bigfoot crashing through the trees behind them. They reached the cabin, flinging the door open and diving inside just as the creature let out another deafening roar. "Lock the door," Jenna shouted, her heart pounding as they stumbled into the small space, gasping for breath. Marcus fumbled with the lock, and they all collapsed against the wall, hearts racing as the sounds of the creature echoed outside. "What do we do now?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling with fear. "We wait," Jenna replied, her mind racing. "We need to figure out how to get out of here safely." As they huddled inside the cabin, the weight of their situation settled over them. They were trapped, the creature lurking just outside, and they needed a plan. "What if we try to communicate again?" Marcus suggested, his voice low. "Maybe it will listen this time." "It's too dangerous," Jenna replied, her heart racing. "We can't risk it. We need to find a way to escape." Just then, they heard the growling again, louder this time, and Jenna felt her heart drop. The Bigfoot was still out there, and it was angry. "What if we distract it?" Sarah suggested. "We could make some noise and try to lead it away." "Good idea," Jenna said, her mind racing. "But we have to be careful. We can't provoke it." They all nodded, determination set in their eyes as they began to formulate a plan. Jenna grabbed a flashlight and pointed it toward the window, illuminating the dark forest outside. "We can use this to make noise," she said, her heart racing. "Okay, but what do we do?" Marcus asked, glancing nervously at the door. "Let's create a diversion," Jenna suggested. "We can throw something outside to draw its attention away." "Like what?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Anything we can find," Jenna replied, scanning the cabin for potential distractions. She spotted a few old cans and a broken chair in the corner. "We can use these." They gathered their supplies, nerves buzzing with adrenaline as they prepared for the distraction. "On the count of 3, we'll throw them out the window and then run in the opposite direction," Jenna instructed, her voice steady. "Ready?" They all nodded, hearts pounding as they positioned themselves near the window. 1, 2, 3, Jenna shouted, and they hurled the cans and chair into the night, the sounds of clattering echoing through the woods. Now, Jenna yelled, and they bolted out the back door, sprinting in the opposite direction. Jenna's heart raced as they dashed through the woods, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Behind them, they could hear the creature's furious growls, a reminder of the danger that lurked just a few steps away. "Where do we go?" Sarah gasped, glancing over her shoulder. "Just keep running," Marcus shouted, pushing them to move faster. They weaved through the trees, branches clawing at their arms as they raced through the darkness. Jenna's breath came in quick gasps, her mind racing as she tried to find a way out of the woods. Then they stumbled into a small clearing, the moonlight illuminating their path. Jenna spotted a narrow trail leading toward the edge of the forest. "There," she shouted, pointing toward the path. "Let's go that way." They sprinted down the trail, their hearts pounding as they heard the creature crashing through the underbrush behind them. They raced toward the edge of the forest, the sounds of the Bigfoot growing louder with each passing moment. Jenna felt a surge of fear, but she knew they had to keep moving. "Almost there," Marcus shouted, pushing ahead as they neared the edge of the woods. But just as they thought they were in the clear, the creature burst through the trees, its massive form blocking their path. "Run," Jenna screamed, but there was nowhere to go. They were cornered, and the creature let out a deafening roar. "Jenna, what do we do?" Sarah cried, fear etched on her face. "Stay calm," Jenna said, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. "We can't let it intimidate us." As the Bigfoot advanced, Jenna stepped forward, holding her hands out in a gesture of peace. "We're not here to hurt you," she called out, her heart pounding in her chest. To her surprise, the creature paused, its eyes narrowing as it studied her. Then it let out a low growl, its posture shifting slightly. "Please," Jenna pleaded, her voice breaking. "We just want to leave." The creature seemed to consider her words, its massive form towering before them. Then, slowly, it stepped back, its growl softening as it seemed to sense their sincerity. "Go," it seemed to convey, its eyes glinting with a mix of warning and understanding. Jenna felt a wave of relief wash over her as the Bigfoot retreated into the shadows. "We did it," she shouted, turning back to her friends, who were wide-eyed with disbelief. "We actually got through to it," Marcus exclaimed, his voice filled with awe. "Let's get out of here," Sarah said, her voice trembling with excitement, "before it changes its mind." They sprinted toward the edge of the woods, adrenaline surging through their veins as they emerged into the open air. The moon shone down, illuminating their path as they finally reached safety. "I can't believe we did it," Jenna gasped, her heart still racing. "I never thought we'd make it," Sarah said, her voice shaking. As they caught their breath, Jenna felt a sense of triumph wash over her. They had faced their fears, confronted the unknown, and emerged stronger. Back in the safety of their cars, Jenna and her friends exchanged nervous glances, each of them processing the experience they had just shared. "What do we do now?" Sarah asked, her voice still trembling. "We need to tell people what we saw," Jenna replied, determination settling over her. "We can't let fear dictate our lives. We need to respect the creatures that share this world with us." As they drove away from Whispering Woods, Jenna couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. They had faced the creature, and though it was terrifying, it had also been a powerful experience. "Do you think it will come after us?" Brian asked, glancing nervously in the rearview mirror. "I hope not," Jenna said, her heart still racing, "but if it does, we'll be ready." As they drove into the night, the memories of their encounter lingered in the air, a reminder of the lessons learned and the bonds forged in the face of fear. They had survived, but more importantly, they had gained a deeper understanding of the unknown, a respect for the creatures that inhabited the shadows. And as they left the Whispering Woods behind, Jenna felt a sense of hope, knowing that even in the darkest of places, there was a chance for understanding, connection, and perhaps even friendship. Weeks passed and life returned to normal, but the memories of that night lingered in Jenna's mind. She found herself drawn to the woods again, but this time with a sense of respect and curiosity rather than fear. "I can't stop thinking about it," she confessed to Sarah one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "Me too," Sarah admitted. "It's like a part of me wants to go back and understand it better." "Maybe we should," Jenna suggested, her heart racing at the thought. We could go back, but this time with the intention of learning, not just escaping. As they discussed their plans, Jenna felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced their fears, and now it was time to seek the truth behind the legend of the Bigfoot. With Marcus and Brian on board, the four friends set out for Whispering Woods once more. This time, they packed supplies not only for safety, but also for documenting their experiences: cameras, notebooks, and even some camping gear. As they drove closer to the woods, excitement bubbled within them. "We're going to uncover the truth," Jenna declared, her heart pounding with anticipation. Once they reached the campsite, they set up their tents, the familiar feeling of unease creeping back. But this time, it was different. They were prepared to face whatever came their way. As night fell, they gathered around a campfire, sharing stories of past encounters with the creature. Jenna spoke of her experience, feeling empowered by her ability to communicate with the Bigfoot. "What do you think it wants?" Brian asked, glancing nervously at the shadows around them. "I think it just wants to be understood," Jenna replied thoughtfully, "just like us." Later that night, as they sat around the fire, Jenna suggested they try to reach out to the Bigfoot again. "What if we make a sign of peace?" she proposed. "We could set up a small offering," Marcus suggested, "something that shows we mean no harm." They gathered some fruit and placed it at the edge of the clearing, a gesture of goodwill. Then they settled in, keeping watch for any signs of the creature. Hours passed, the silence of the woods surrounding them. Just as they began to doubt their decision, a rustling noise broke the stillness. Jenna's heart raced as she strained to see through the darkness. "It's here," she whispered, adrenaline coursing through her veins. And then, emerging from the shadows, the Bigfoot stepped into view, its massive form silhouetted against the moonlight. "Stay calm," Jenna urged her friends, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The creature paused, its eyes locking onto Jenna as it sniffed the air, clearly aware of their presence. Jenna felt a surge of hope and courage. "Remember, we're not here to hurt you," she called out softly, holding her hands out in a gesture of peace. To her amazement, the Bigfoot stepped forward, cautiously approaching the offering they had left. It sniffed at the fruit, and for a moment, the world around them fell silent, the tension palpable. Then, the creature turned its gaze toward Jenna, a flicker of understanding passing between them. It let out a low grunt, almost like a sigh, and Jenna's heart swelled with emotion. "See," she whispered to her friends, her eyes wide with disbelief. "It's responding." As the Bigfoot examined the fruit, Jenna felt a connection forming, a bridge built on mutual respect. "We want to learn from you," she said, her voice steady. "We're not your enemies." The creature tilted its head, its expression inscrutable, but Jenna could sense a shift in its demeanor. Slowly, it retreated back into the shadows, glancing back one last time before disappearing into the trees. "Did that just happen?" Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe. "I think it did," Marcus replied, his eyes wide with disbelief. "We actually connected with it." That night, they shared their thoughts and feelings, the weight of the experience settling over them like a warm blanket. They realized they had not only confronted their fears, but had also opened a door to understanding something greater. "We need to share this story," Jenna said, her heart full. "People need to know that there's more to the legend of Bigfoot than just fear. It's about coexistence and respect." As they packed up their campsite the next morning, Jenna felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced the unknown and emerged with knowledge that would change their lives forever. And as they drove away from Whispering Woods, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that their encounter was just the beginning. There were more stories to uncover, more truths to discover, and she was ready to embark on that journey. Years later, Jenna returned to Whispering Woods, this time as a speaker at a local event dedicated to wildlife conservation and folklore. She shared her story with others, emphasizing the importance of respecting nature and understanding the creatures that inhabit it. The crowd listened intently, their eyes wide with fascination. "We are all part of this world," Jenna concluded, her heart full. "And if we want to coexist with the unknown, we must learn to listen and respect." As she stepped down from the stage, she felt a sense of fulfillment. They had not only survived their encounter but had also become advocates for understanding the mysteries of the wilderness. and as she left the event, she glanced back at the woods, feeling a connection that would last a lifetime. Whispering Woods held secrets and stories that would continue to inspire those brave enough to seek them out, and Jenna was grateful to be part of that legacy.